but talking to people who are on their deathbed, the first thing they regret is love left on the table. The second thing they regret is chances not taken. Just my top tip is be willing to look stupid. You date somebody, intellectually you know there's no way this works, but you dial into hope. That has never really worked.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships. I'm your host, Beatrice. Do you ever feel like you're just living on autopilot? Like you're just going through the motions every day? You're not really living consciously on the daily? Well, today we're going to be going into an amazing conversation about connection and how our connection to ourselves, to the world around us, to others, really impacts us living a really fulfilled life. I am joined today by Dr. Adam Dorsay. He is a psychologist, a podcaster, and an author. And we're going to be talking about how connection impacts our lives. I'm so excited to have today's guest, Dr. Adam Dorsay. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, I got to tell you, Beatrice, just getting to know you in the green room was so much fun. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm excited to get into today's discussion. But first, I really want to hear about you. I want to hear about your background, how you got started in psychology, and why you wrote your book.
I'm so glad to share that with you. My mom said that I came out of the womb basically wanting to connect with the world. She said that she'd never seen a baby when she was pushing a stroller more inclined to connect. So it's almost as if I was born with like a letter C on my chest, instead of letters as for Superman, I was more like the connector.
Love that.
So there were a couple problems though along the way. I was neurodivergent. I had ADHD of the inattentive type. I was dyslexic. So I made my way down from kind of the gifted and intelligent class all the way down to special education. So for years I marinated in this idea that I couldn't learn and that there was something profoundly intellectually wrong with me. That would take a long time. And I'm still, by the way, all these years later, still at times feeling the ghosts of it showing up. Anyhow, I go off to college, study a lot of Japanese, move to Japan, go into first round of graduate school, think that I'm going to become a psychologist. I got derailed, entered the corporate world. Worked in the corporate world in Japan and the US for a number of years. And then I married a psychologist. And every day she would describe her day and I would think to myself, that was supposed to be my day.
Dang.
And so the problem was the timing. I was older. I was in my 30s. I had a child and a house and a mortgage. Didn't seem convenient. And I married very well. My wife said, honey, I want a happy husband. It doesn't matter to me if we take a massive financial hit. So earned my doctorate and then left the corporate world where I had lovely benefits. And I started getting paid $10 an hour with no benefits to earn my 3,000 hours towards licensure. Everybody's dream come true, but that's why you get a home equity line of credit. And I took a bet on myself and so glad I did because I feel so much more connected to life itself by being more connected to the thing that I really, really wanted to do, become a psychologist. And I love it. It turned into just the most fun I've ever had professionally since I was a camp counselor.
I love it.
Primarily with men. I ended up doing a TEDx talk on men and emotions, another one on friendship and adulthood. I created a program at Facebook that went international for 4 years with their counterterrorism and child safety teams for just kind of boosting resilience. I continue to do that work with DigitalOcean, started a podcast, about almost 250 episodes in.
Wow,
and,
that's
wrote
incredible.
That so that's what's going on. So
that's amazing.
I'm into it.
And I have your book here called Super Psyched. And I've been reading it and I thought it was such a great read. And I love how you went into talking about kind of pulling out connection and how that is really at the core of living a fulfilled life. And I don't think I've ever really considered that. I've never really looked at it that way because I think a lot of us kind of go through the motions. We live our lives kind of in this little kind of rat race sometimes. Like we wake up, we do the same things every day, but we don't really feel fulfilled. And I love how you really kind of pull out how at the core of that, it's usually a lack of connection that makes us feel that way. And so I would love to understand what what really inspired this book for you?
Oh, Beatrice, I'm so glad you asked. After 20,000 hours of conducting therapy and doing tons of podcasts and reading lots of books just like you do, the word connection just kept showing up in all of these contexts. It was the linchpin, but nobody had to really define connection. It's like we were supposed to know what it is. And secondly, the books on connection are usually about connecting with your soulmate, connecting with your children, connecting with your clients. But what about the 4 ways we connect? And what about defining it? We connect in 4 ways. We connect with ourselves, we connect with others, we connect with the world, and we connect with something greater. And I define all of those, but the definition of connection that I came up with, a working definition with 10 of my licensed mental health professional colleagues, was vitality, the thing that causes you to come alive, life force. You know it when you feel it. When you hear music that just hits you versus music that you're told should hit you but doesn't.
Yeah.
And
it's like an electricity through you. You just feel like 100%. You've totally come to life.
Yeah. Or like when you and I started talking, it was like, oh yeah, all right, we're old friends. I already know her. She's great. It was like, hey, what's going on?
It's crazy as for listeners, we didn't have, usually I'll have a call with people that I don't know before, but I didn't. And we got on and I was like, hey, Adam, like, as if we're like, we've known each other forever. And I think that's just so, I knew instantly, I was like, oh, this is going to be great.
100%. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
And you can't fake that.
You can't fake that.
People do try to fake that. And what ends up happening, by the way, and I know you know about this, is the biggest decision we'll make in life is who we marry. The other biggest decision is what we'll do for work. Work, love and work. Sigmund Freud talked about it and he was right. I know he's been shown to be wrong about some things, right about more things than we give him credit for, but work and love or love and work are the bigs. So here's what happens. You date somebody. You find yourself feeling attached and in love. Intellectually, there's no way this works, but but the sex is great. The heart connection is there and you dial into hope. It's going to be okay. It's going to we'll figure it out. You know what we'll do? We'll get married and we'll have a kid. Then it will be okay. That has never really, really worked.
It never
We need to start
works.
with, so I say, start with your head and work down. Does it make sense for us to be married? Do we solve problems well together? Or when problems show up, as they always do in life, does it make our relationship worse? Do we come together over problems or do we separate over problems?
Yeah.
And is this an efficient system? I know that sounds really unsexy, but do we dial through those? So we dial into hope, and that's one of our biggest disconnectors. We say, hope is a strategy. No, it's not a strategy.
It's not. And hope is, there's no guarantee of what that is. Hope is just an idea. It's not actually real. You can't rely and make decisions on hope at the end of the day. Someone had said once, when you're looking for a partner, there's always like there's 3 areas that you need to be that need to necessarily align. It's like, can you be friends? Are you friends at the end of the day? Can you be lovers? And can you be partners? All those 3 things. And I love that, because that, yes, you have to core values and all the other things, but that is something I'm like, it's so true, because so many people aren't friends. They're lovers and they're partners, but they don't have a friendship at the end of the day, or they're friends, but they aren't really lovers, but they're life partners, and then you have a roommate. It's basically what that becomes. So I loved having that broken down in those 3 things, because it does a partner, someone can you do life with, right? So I loved that, because it just breaks everything down, where it's still logic, it's heart, and it's does it make sense?
Doesn't make sense. What was so interesting is the last relationship I had before I got married, lovely human being, but just all wrong for me. And I looked at her and said, when we were breaking up, I just know this isn't working. And and she said, well, you're never going to find somebody better than me. And I said, that might be true, but I have to try. And I knew unequivocally that if I did try to bring it forward, I would be depriving her of her soulmate. And lo and behold, I still know this person. She married the right guy.
Yeah.
And he is not me. But what I ended up doing for the first time in my life was I wrote out the attributes of the woman based on my own personal history. I was looking for what works and what doesn't work. What are the deal breakers? What are the deal makers? What would be important but maybe negotiable, and what would be just nice but not necessary. Like, it'd be great if she was also a sports fan and wanted to watch sports with me. My wife does not.
Yeah.
And it's fine. But all of the deal breakers and all the deal makers, she is like a 10 out of 10 on all of them. And all of the important stuff, it's there.
Yeah.
Again, there's certain silly things that we don't share in common, and
Yeah.
it has not harmed the marriage.
Yeah. And I think that's just the reality. Like, you're not going to find someone who, likes every little thing like you. And I think that's just Hollywood selling us a story.
100%. And have you ever seen a Hollywood movie where people have been married for 10 years having hot sex? It doesn't happen.
No.
It's always the first time, and amazing music and chemistry.
Yeah.
And we're sold that it has to be like that all the time. We don't talk about the fact that things change. By the way, there's a great show. This Is Us. You've probably seen it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
The amount of times I've cried watching that show is like not normal.
But the thing I love about that show is it's revolutionary. They show a hot married couple who are super into each other over the period of time, and they're still having sex.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hell yes, what a great show. Thank you, Mandy Moore, and I forget the guy's name.
He has some Italian name. It's not coming to me right now.
Great name. It's a great name, and he's a great actor. He's been in a lot of stuff, and I feel like a complete schmuck for forgetting his name, but fantastic actor, and one of the really, like, maybe the best father character I have ever seen. So
100%.
my apologies. Maybe in the show notes we'll include him.
Yeah.
Because he deserves it. He's so good.
He's so good. And I love how they showed, though, like, the ups and the downs, the difficult times, the having to work through, like, he had an alcohol addiction and what that looked like, and having, Mandy really, like, go in and be like, this is a problem, and like actually addressing it and working through a hard issue. And it's like, that's marriage, right? But at the end, what I loved about them too is they were friends. Like, they enjoyed each other's company. I think so many relationships I see that aren't doing well, half the time I'm like, do you guys enjoy each other? I don't see that. Like, I don't see at the end of the day. I think when I look at couples I know can overcome hardships, is at the end of the day, they can enjoy each other. They enjoy their partner, right? That
1,000,000%. Yes.
Yeah, that's what gets you through the hard parts, right? But if you don't even enjoy your partner to begin with, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this is really
Yeah, and it can actually, you hear the cuts, the sarcasm. By the way, sarcasm, the etymological root is, that which cuts flesh. And you see this, just like these cutting relationships that feel, like they're talking to each other. They may not be yelling at each other, but they clearly don't like each other.
Yeah. And they
hold each other in disregard.
Hard.
And John Gottman talks about that as one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse,
yes.
holding the other in contempt or criticism. We really want to have that golden ratio of 5 positives to every 1 negative, and maybe even more, to keep the relationship in a net positive zone. So there's so many things that have been emerging in terms of the technology of couples that did not exist 30, 40 years ago. A lot of things were created on hunches, not really research-based. I'm so grateful. I mean, I know you're into attachment theory and whatnot. I'm so grateful to the people who've headed things up, the John Gottmans, the Harville Hendricks, Stan Tatkin, who, I'm obsessed with, Esther Perel. Oh my gosh, these people have just done. Terry Real. These folks have really moved. As I bang my mic, they've moved the technology of couple therapy so forward and helped us connect better.
They have, and I think they've really made it practical, which I think is so needed, right? But they've done incredible work. But in terms of connection, so I am curious, what, we have those 4 areas that we feel connected. What are their disconnectors? Like, what actually disconnects us from feeling present, from being fulfilled, from feeling connected to ourselves and to others? Because I feel like so many of us, especially honestly, this last couple of years coming out of COVID and just this world that we're kind of living in that kind of feels chaotic and kind of all over the place right now. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, do live on autopilot, right? They look at themselves. Right. Yeah, they look at themselves and they realize, like, wait, I'm not even fulfilled in my life. And I just want people to know that you can live a fulfilled life. You can live a beautiful, connected life. But what disconnects us?
Yeah, the first thing that you just said, that you can live a fulfilled life. I mean, it's not going to be necessarily the most elegant
Yeah.
ride. There are
We have to
going to be
define
bumps
that, right?
along the way.
Right. What's fulfilled?
Yeah, so it's not like, hey, wow, I went from 0 to fulfilled and it was super cool and easy. Usually there are bumps and, walls along the way. But
Yeah.
you were asking, what are the disconnectors? Well, we have these 35 to 100,000-year-old brains that have served us throughout the millennia. And the brains are actually not all that different than they were these tens of thousands of years ago. And yet our surroundings have changed dramatically. They've been wired for us to survive, for us to connect somewhat. I mean, we have empathy, we have mirror neurons, we have certain elements that cause us, oxytocin to cuddle because it's reinforcing. But we also have these cognitive biases that cause us to disconnect. We experience social comparison when we go on these little devices that we carry around and waste hours of our day consuming social media and seeing people living their best lives, and we think, wow, I suck, I feel diminished. So there's social comparison, there's FOMO, oh my gosh, I wish I was at that concert, instead of JOMO, like joy of missing out. There are so many elements, and my gosh, you just throw social media into this and we get hurt. The things that we need to do instead, and I'm really cutting to the quick, are engage in gratitude. Look around, take an inventory of what we've got and find a way to be grateful for those things. We know that what appreciates. What we appreciate appreciates. So I got a new car, my very first new car in my life. I know, much later in life. And I roll up and every house in my neighborhood has a better car than mine, sometimes 2x, 3x more expensive. But I make it a point every time I drive this car that I actually do love, which has killer non-OEM tires that I just love my tires. It's become like a family joke. Like at some point I'm going to talk about, isn't this car awesome? And aren't these tires insane? Like at some point I will say that. And I'm saying that in part because it's funny, but in large part to really, really not allow the new car smell to dissipate. I've had it for 2 years and I freaking love it. I love this car. So I could instead say, wow, how do they get that, 3x more expensive car? I don't. And one of the things I could do is I could try to compare myself to, let's go with the great Chris Hemsworth. I am no Chris Hemsworth. If I try to compare myself to Chris Hemsworth and his beautiful physical attributes, I'm screwed. But what if I compared myself to me? To me yesterday? How am I trending? How am I doing a year ago? Am I getting closer to being a more complete version of me? I'm never going to be a Nordic god like Thor. It's not happening. That's for Chris. But if I compare myself to how am I doing on the measures that really matter to me, I care about being a good husband. I want to be a great husband. That's the most important role I play. I want to be a great psychologist. And let's not forget, I want to be an amazing father to my boys. These are the things that really, really matter to me. And I, of course, want to be just like a killer friend. I often think of that movie, I Love You Man, with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel, one of my all-time favorite buddy films.
Funny.
Like bromance.
I haven't seen it.
I want to be that kind of friend.
That's funny. Yeah, I think I think our attention's being pulled in so many different directions, and we're constantly told what we're not good at this, And so do you think that that's why we feel like we can't achieve this, so then we just settle for less? We say, this seems unachievable, so I'm not even going to try. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to carry on doing, I feel like fear is what holds us back a lot of the time, though.
That's right. And if
From
you look
living
at
that
deathbeds,
fulfilled life, because I see it. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it so many times. And we don't take risk. We don't take chances. And there's a lot of reasons probably why we don't, but it's sad. Like, it's like, I want us all to live those like amazing, fulfilled lives.
we fear things that we do not need to fear. And as I was mentioning, in those 35,000-year-old brains to 100,000-year-old brains, fear is a very important moderator in our life to keep us away from things that could kill us, because more important than anything is keeping our bloodline alive, according to survival. We think things will kill us. Like me, venturing out to become a psychologist later in life was terrifying. It took many thwacks from my wife and friends for me to finally, say I'm in, I'm going for it. I'm doing something. I'm leaving, to borrow from Lord of the Rings. I'm leaving the Shire. I'm going to begin this hero's journey, and it's going to be scary. And I'm out in the freaking wilderness.
Yeah.
None of us wants to do that. And yet what do we know? We know from deathbed studies. I know it sounds rather morose, but talking to people who are on their deathbed, the things they regret are at least two big categories. The first thing they regret is love left on the table. They regret not telling people they love them or really giving more love.
Yeah.
The second thing they regret, and this is the big one, is chances not taken. They don't mind if they failed, but they mind that they didn't try. And so to your point, to our future selves, we owe buckling down, zeroing in on some. I'm not saying be reckless, but I am saying being conscientious and go for that, hairy, audacious goal that you have. And even if you fail along the way, you will not regret it later because you will have tried. But on the other side, you might succeed and find new doorways. And one of the other things that we also know, by the way, to your point, Beatrice, is many of us prefer a familiar hell than unfamiliar paradise.
Yeah.
It's like, I already know this place. It's known to me. I'm not going to, I keep using that kind of Lord of the Rings, leave the Shire. Or for the Star Wars fans, leaving Tatooine. Like, you got to leave for a minute. My son's about to venture off to Nepal tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm tripping, and he's going to be doing some, really high hill climbing. And he is going to come back a changed person.
Absolutely.
In a good, God willing, in a very good way.
Yeah.
But we need to stretch. And again, not reckless. I'm not saying base jumping because, with all due respect to those who do base jumping, the mortality rate associated with that particular activity is higher than I would care to do. But
yeah, you're like, yeah. And it's like, we have to just get used to failing. And I think I think what I loved about your book was it's so super practical. You always left a chapter with kind of the practicality of the practice. And I think a way for us to get used to failing and get used to putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations is start by doing it with small things. Like, right? Like, I think, like, try a new sport you've never done, right? Or, I don't know, things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, I would say start doing, right? Saying hi to people in a grocery line, or like basic small things you kind of allow your nervous system to start getting used. Do an ice bath, man. Do an ice bath. Like, that will
100%. By the way, ice baths, I'm not saying that everybody should do them, but boy, when I have the guts to do one of those, the feeling I have afterwards is just unbelievable. It's the most alive my body has ever felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't do those nearly enough. I probably should buy one.
Yeah, I don't either. I hate it, but I do it for that reason. I do it because it's miserable and I hate it. And I made a conscious effort a couple of years ago. I was like, I have to start doing things I'm not comfortable with, because I dealt with like the perfectionism, throughout my whole life. And I think it really stopped me from pursuing a lot of things, because I was like, well, if I'm not good at it, I don't want to do it. And I really made a conscious effort to start doing things I don't like or that I'm potentially not good at, just for the sake of doing it and for trying and for learning. And man, like, I feel like it's made it's made the bigger, harder decisions a little bit easier, because I'm like, okay, I know that I can tolerate the discomfort. Like, I know,
For sure. So do you remember in high school when you were so self-conscious, so self-conscious that even when you were alone, you were still self-conscious, and that is something called an imaginary audience. And the imaginary audience is more profound during our adolescent years, but it continues throughout life, and that's what keeps us from wanting to look stupid. We don't want to look stupid. And if I was to hand down just my top tip, it is be willing to look stupid. Guy Kawasaki said on my podcast, it is a Hawaiian expression for it, pigeon. You got to make ass. You got to be willing to make an ass out of yourself.
Yeah.
And I learned how to speak Japanese well because I was willing to look like an idiot for a very long time. And many people, the reason they don't learn how to speak a foreign language is there is a long period where you're going to look stupid. And you may continue to look stupid even after you think you speak it well because you say something really, really wrong. So I would say be willing to override the imaginary audience, be willing to look stupid, carry on as you grow. We go through these 4 stages of learning a thing. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. Second stage, like let's say we're driving a stick shift car, we become consciously incompetent. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a stick shift here, and there's a clutch here. Oh, there's a pedal here, and another pedal here, and a steering wheel, and a blinker. Oh my gosh, like, I am so incompetent. And I'm never gonna get it. And then after we do enough reps of a thing, it's like, okay, I can do it, but don't talk to me while I do it. That we're consciously competent.
Yeah.
And then when we really have done enough reps and we can do it without even thinking, we can practically eat a hamburger while we're doing it, or have a really intense conversation. That's when we become unconsciously competent. And the willingness to brave those 4 stages in learning a thing is another big tip for having a more connected life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think another FOMO, we talked about FOMO earlier, and this idea of like the fear of missing out and how I think that plays such a huge role in being disconnected, even though at the root of FOMO, you think it's because, well, I don't want to be disconnected, so I want to say yes to everything, because if I'm not there, then I'm disconnected from the thing that's happening. But in reality, it actually is a really big disconnector. And I did not realize that either in my own life, because I'm a little social butterfly. I want to say yes to everything and I want to be at everything. And when I'm not, I'm like, oh, they don't like me, or I make up all these things I'm missing out on. This is the biggest thing of the year and I'm not there, like that sort of mentality. But I feel like with FOMO, you often find yourself saying yes to things you actually really don't want to go to.
So let me take a guess. I'm just going to plot my imagination of something you said yes to that you really, really should have said no to.
Yeah.
So you're invited to this thing and you go and you show up and you're thinking to yourself, dude, what am I doing? I could be at home chilling. I could be with a different friend who is more meaningful with us, maybe just a one-on-one. And then at some point you resent yourself for having consented. I call it consent and resent. It's like, oh my gosh, I am such a schmuck. And it actually decreases your trust in yourself. And you get angry at the other people in some ways, like, why do you guys suck? And in that consent and resent cycle, it's a nasty, toxic experience. And the more we get to know ourselves and experience Jomo, say, you know what? I am missing out on this thing, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm choosing to hang out instead of with these 5 people who are going to go party, unless you really need to do that. I'm going to hang out with that one friend. And we're just going to go on for a walk on the beach and then like talk about stuff because we so badly need to catch up.
Well, and so often with FOMO too, I realized when I was saying yes to things, it was at the expense of other things that I really wanted to do, right? So let's say like I had something planned. It was a Saturday and it was early in the morning. And I was like, oh, I really want to like wake up and get a workout in. Like I want to take this class that and then maybe I've had this whole Saturday morning planned out. But then someone's like, and my thought was, I'm not going to go out on Friday because I want to do all this stuff on Saturday. But then someone's like, you want to go do something on Friday, right? And you're like, I really don't, because I already promised myself that I was going to do other things that I had planned on Saturday. And then you start saying no to you. You say yes to others because you don't want to miss out. You don't want to be the one that always says no. And then you go. And I feel like it's that next day that I'm like, I knew I shouldn't have gone. I didn't want to go, And I feel like that we do that more and more and more and more. And like you mentioned in the book, you start to become more and more disconnected from yourself, essentially.
You nailed it. And within those 35,000-year-old brains, we have a cognitive bias towards yes. We want to say yes. We don't want to cause displeasure. That's why we buy that car that we know we really didn't want, because we don't want to say no to the sales rep. And it's really important to learn how to say no. I remember talking to a boundary expert, and she said her favorite word is no, because a no outside is a yes to her. When I say no to them, I say yes to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's brilliant. And it's a very hard thing to learn. It's especially for those of us who are people pleasers who don't want to cause conflict.
Yeah. It's very hard. And I feel like the way I've become more conscious of it is I've just been more in tune with me. I've had to ground myself first before jumping to the yes. it's like really check in with yourself. What do you actually want? Do you want to go to this thing, right? If you've set a goal of, let's say, working out every Saturday morning, well, then that choice comes with that sacrifice is, okay, well, my
100%.
answer is no, and all these other things, and because that thing on Saturday will actually give me more fulfillment than the regretful yes on Friday,
Yeah, you'll start pissing on yourself for not having done the thing that you committed to do. Like there's something you're trying to build, and it requires sacrifice. Decision and incision also share a root. When you decide to do something, you cut away the other thing. None of us likes to cut away something. It sucks. It hurts. But if you can summon the conviction and realize that by being true to yourself is more important as a principle and a reality, you will feel more confident. One of my friends, he has this imaginary person who he's accountable to because it's a little bit more, it's a little easier for him to say, yes to himself when he's basically saying, I think the guy's name is Carlos. He says yes to Carlos. And so then he's like, dude, I can't go out drinking tonight. I got an early morning run, but, maybe we can like have coffee later in the day. So, always have a counter offer if possible.
Yeah.
So that you can at least do something with that person if they are of importance. By the way, I would never suggest hanging out with somebody who sucks for you. I have something that I call a drive-away test. I'm sure you have driven away from a cup of coffee thinking, oh my God, I tried to tell that friend about my trip to Japan. And all they did was talk about Japan and their trip. And there was no back and forth. It was just them breathing on me and telling me all this stuff. And every time I tried to share something, it was back to them. And one of the things we know is we need to have a really good upload, download. And I call it the drive away test. Do you, after hanging out with that person, feel taller, happier, somehow better about life and yourself as you drive away from that interaction? It's a very telling moment. And it should inform how much time you decide to allocate to that relationship. Of course, there may be some times that you hang out with somebody who's awesome and they just have been through something and there has been no time for you and you feel a little bit tired, but you think, you realize that in the balance of things, this is a one-off. Like this was, she's just in the midst of a massive breakup and just needed to lean on me. You can still actually feel better as you drive away. Like, wow, I was of service to somebody who matters.
Yeah.
But when it's, I think about that person, like enough about me. What do you think about me?
Right. Oh yeah.
Not a great feeling.
And there's no, back and forth and sharing and no. And then you come away depleted.
100%.
Yeah. And as you can see, the more we do these things, right, the more disconnected we become from ourselves, the more easily we fall into living in autopilot. We just say yes to everything. We have no North Star. We don't have boundaries. We don't set goals for ourselves. We don't maintain the goals because we set them, but we aren't true to them. We are not accountable to them. And over time, you look at your life and you're like, this life I'm not living. Like this is totally unfulfilled and totally like where's the spark of it again, right? Or we stay, you mentioned a lot. I really love what you said too about staying in careers and staying in jobs and staying in places that have expired entirely, and how miserable we are in those spaces, because
and we just
again,
go back to them by habit.
Yeah, and then we get on autopilot, because fear creeps in, right? The comfort, I think comfort's a huge one in that. It's like you said, what we know, and then slowly we just become so disconnected from ourselves, and it's that makes it just, I don't know, it's so, you kind of have to wake up from it because sometimes you're in that for so long and you don't see it.
That's right. And one of the things I know for sure, and one of my favorite maxims, is that hurt people. And when we're hurting because we're not paying attention to ourselves, we will inadvertently hurt other people. We are, I like thinking about it as being akin, like let's imagine, and I'm not saying become a self-absorbed person and a narcissist, but we need to spend time getting to know who we are and what we're about.
Yeah.
And when we don't, it's as if you're sitting in class and for the last 15 minutes of class, you had to pee real bad. On the way to the bathroom, your best friend comes and says, oh my God, I got to tell you this incredibly long story. This is so amazing. Do you have the bandwidth when you have to go pee real bad to listen to that story. You don't. But that's exactly what happens when we're living on autopilot. We're not really fully there when our friends are telling us about themselves because we're kind of dissociated from our own lives.
Yeah. No, we really are. And I think in my journey too of just growth and, really learning more about myself, the more grounded you are in you, the more capacity you have for others.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I always thought, I think in my background, I grew up Christian in the church, and I still do, but I think there's this underlying like deny yourself and I understand where that comes from now. But I think when you're not grounded in yourself, you don't have the capacity to see others pain and hurt and to be there for others because you're so either disassociated, like you said, or distracted. I found so much more peace in being grounded because I'm not worried about me. Like I'm not so worried about like, where am I going? What am I doing? Oh my God. You become so self-consumed, I think, when you're not grounded.
Yeah, you're more available. I don't know if you've ever shaken hands with somebody who had to give you a dead fish handshake.
Oh gosh, yes. It's like
it's just like, oh, it's kind of gross.
It is. It's like, oh, and then if it's
don't
clammy,
want to go through life as a limp handshake. I mean, there's this disembodied component. Yeah. No, you want to be freaking embodied during this life. We got a small dash between our birth date and our death date.
So small.
Date. Maybe let's be alive for that.
Yeah.
Let's be alive while we're living.
Yeah. And that's why, I just connected so much with this because like a big reason why I even started this podcast was like, I want people to have better relationships. Like life is too short to marry wrong. Life is too short to be in a bad relationship. Like it's like you said, it's one of the most important decisions in our lives. And I'm like, it's just, we don't have that much time on this earth. And I just do not believe that God created us to live on this earth, to just live unfulfilled lives and to live menial, not exciting, not joyful lives. And I don't mean fulfilled by lots of money and big houses and all that, right? That's not it at the end of the day, but it's do you have life within you, and it's sad to see how many people don't. I think I would say more people don't than do.
There's an old rabbinic tale, since we're talking about religion a little bit, where this rabbi in the 1800s takes his students to go climbing the Swiss Alps. And around day 3, one of his students says, shouldn't we just be sitting around studying the Torah? And he says, I'm so glad you asked. We're doing this because when I die, I don't want to go up to heaven and have God ask me, what did you think of my Alps? And not have an answer. And when you think about that, it's like, how many of us don't climb the Alps? How many of us don't do that awesome thing during that dash between our birth date and our death date? How many of us have a bucket list of all these awesome things that we want to do and we're not doing them because we're scared, because we might look stupid, because there might be a learning curve, because we tell ourselves there's no time except for the fact that we're spending 3 hours on social media? Create more, consume less. You've created a podcast. You're doing stuff, Beatrice. You're really a light to your listeners. You are living the thing.
Oh, I appreciate that. Doesn't always feel that way inside, but yes.
Well, we're not. Well, and we're not always. And the word "always" is a bad word. Oh, and we're not always doing it.
Yeah.
There are times when we're doing kind of dumb stuff, and there are times when, in spite of all of my schooling and in spite of how committed I am to being a good father, a good husband, where I suck and I miss. The question is, the word repent actually is an old archery term. It means I missed the target. Repenting means trying to hit the target again. Can I repent? Can I take another shot at the target and say, my God, and give a real apology? By the way, one of my favorite episodes on my podcast was called A Good Apology by a brilliant psychologist. And she basically gave the 4 steps of what a good apology looks like. And it doesn't look like, I'm sorry if you felt that way. I mean, dude, that is not an apology.
It's not an apology.
I'm sorry if, screw that. Or I'm sorry and I was just giving an excuse. But instead it's, I'm so sorry I did that. I'm wondering, it's dealing with, like, what was that like for you? And, eliciting like their feelings and hearing them and coming up with ways to not have it happen again. Of course, we can't do that every time, but that is a form of hitting the target after having missed the target, which we all do. None of us is perfect.
No, you have to be so conscious of it. Like I still to this day, people ask me to do something, I literally have to check in. Is this something I really want to go to? Do I actually really have time for this? Is this going to deplete me? what do I have the next day after that? Like I've had to it's so hard for all y'all who are the want to do everything people. Like I totally get it. But yeah, it's like it's a daily practice.
Yeah,
Quite
Beatrice,
literally.
I'm totally fascinated. It's almost like you have a drop down menu
I
that
do.
asks you certain
Yeah.
prompts.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something I really want to do? Is there something I'd rather do? Like it reminds me a little bit of Byron Katie's, questions
Yeah.
about like, like, is this true? How do you
Yeah.
know it's true? Um, so yeah, I love that. I love that system. And I'm guessing that this is going to be an evolving system. It
Yeah.
will get better. There will be a V2, a
Absolutely.
V3, a V4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we need to do constantly is constantly ask ourselves, how can I continue to evolve? My father's 85.
Wow.
He hadn't played the piano since he was in his single digits.
Wow.
He's now a retired physician. He decided to, reinvigorate his love for the piano in his 80s. And he plays. He's not planning on becoming a concert pianist.
Yeah.
But he freaking loves it. He studies all things. Like the thing I write in his birthday card, he's the most amazing guy. He was actually episode number 150 on my podcast. And a major thought leader called me and said, that wasn't just the best of your podcast. That's the best podcast interview I've ever heard of anybody. And the funny thing is, my dad, before the interview, said, I have nothing to say. Yeah, he had a lot to say.
Yeah, you're like, you're wise. You've got plenty to talk about.
And he's been a role model for me. He's basically every birthday card I ever signed for him. I highlight the things he's done this year because he's always hitting it hard. He's always changing, learning new things, learning new languages, going to new places, taking on new projects. He is awesome. And I want to be like that. I want to hit it hard till the day I die.
Same. I have that, like, I know when I'm going on autopilot is when I don't have that in me, right? Like that, right? That feeling that you're like, I want to do all the things. I want to smell the flowers and I want to, cook all the things and, I've recognized it in my own life. Like this past year has been a lot like that, a lot like, less exciting. And it's like, you have to sit back and really kind of ask yourself, like, what is going on?
That's
but I'm definitely going to have to listen to that episode with your dad.
It's episode number 150 on Super Psyched. And
I love it.
And the funny thing is, I've interviewed, for example, Steve Kerr, who's one of my absolute heroes. He's a coach of the Golden State Warriors. And I was kind of shaking my boots.
Yeah.
My dad, and he's got a lot of downloads, obviously. My dad has more downloads than Steve Kerr.
No way.
It was hilarious. Like, it was like, what? I could not believe it. So I'm really proud of him and just love him so much. And he becomes more dear to me every year.
Oh, you're so lucky to have someone like that. That's incredible.
Ridiculous.
And to be able to,
so are my sons to get to have a grandpa like that.
Yeah.
By the way, one thing I just need to call out.
Yeah.
For those of you who've been watching, I have this really humongous hydration system. This is one of the ways I take care of myself so I can give you the best I can give you during this interview.
Yeah.
I will not get any extra points for denying myself water and electrolytes.
Oh yeah.
I will give you for sure a better interview by taking care of myself. So this is one of the ways I connect with myself.
We can cheers with your water and coffee.
Cheers, sister.
Because it's funny, I was telling him earlier, I was like trying to do my little intro to this and I was like, I can't do this. I don't really do early morning podcast recordings because of this reason.
Yes.
I'm on fire on all cylinders early in the morning. I haven't talked to anyone yet, so thank you for being gracious with that. But no, it's so true. I'm like, well, I'm gonna sit here with my coffee, and no, I love it. That's why I love this podcast. I'm like, it's supposed to be real,
Totally. And I'm ridiculously caffeinated myself. Thank you, yerba mate and coffee.
Right.
I love you both.
Gosh, they help us get through this. But so what are practical ways? We've kind of touched on disconnectors, right? We touched on what are the 4 areas that we connect. We've touched on what causes us to disconnect, right? Not being true to ourselves, allowing fear to kind of lead our decisions, allowing FOMO to kind of get in the way and ultimately lead us. We become so disconnected, we kind of start to live on an autopilot, right? We're not really making decisions. We're not really living consciously, right? We're living kind of in our unconscious. So what are practical ways, maybe some of our listeners are out there and they're saying, wow, yeah, like I I feel like I'm on autopilot. I don't feel like I'm really have a zest for life right now. I don't feel fulfilled in my career. I don't feel fulfilled in my life right now. What are practical ways for someone who's right now realizing that to get
so I'm going to start
out
with a
of
heady,
that?
for sure. So I'm going to start with the headiest quote of all time, which is the most beautiful quote. And it's just hearing these words are life-changing unto themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of all time, said, and I'm paraphrasing, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will drive us and we will think it was fate.
Mm-hmm.
Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will drive us and we will think it was fate. So we need to take some time. It's almost like a snow globe or muddy water. It takes time for the things that are distracting us to kind of settle and for us to see things more clearly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do something really hard, or I'm going to have to break up with someone, or blah, blah, blah. And it's not always, yay. Sometimes it's more wah, wah. So the 4 ways we connect, just to review, we connect with ourselves. We connect with others. Others could be, my wife, my kids, could be you right now, Beatrice, could be my pets. I have a cat in this room who I connect with very well. I'm a recovered former felinophobe. I used to hate cats, but now I think they're great as long as they're as long as they're extroverted.
Yeah.
And the 3rd way is we connect to and of course how we connect to our friends, how we connect to the world. Is how we connect with work, how we connect with nature, how we connect with art. Really important, our ancestry. I know you connect with yours, which is really beautiful. You speak the language of your ancestors. That's really important, to dance with your ancestors. Maya Angelou once said, unless you know where you're from, you don't know where you're going. And I'm paraphrasing that badly, but you get the idea. And then how we connect with, something greater. For some people, it's traditional church. For the most orthodox atheist, going to the Grand Canyon, going to Stonehenge will elicit awe. And that is akin to a spiritual experience. In fact, when we're in an awestruck state, and we saw it during the 2017 solar eclipse in Oregon, people were hugging each other who didn't know each other. We become less self-conscious. The same brain areas that come alive when we ingest psilocybin, which is the psychoactive chemical for magic mushrooms, which is actually showing some promise thanks to Johns Hopkins studies on trauma, without even needing to ingest magic mushrooms, in being in an awestruck state can make us more pro-social. So what we want to do is look at one area, because if we try to chase 2 rabbits, we get neither. But just look at one thing at a time. Ask yourself, where do I want to go deeper? And I would suggest starting with probably yourself. If you're, I forget how it goes. It's something, it came from James Joyce. He said something akin to, Mr. Smith lived a short distance from his body. And many of us go through life like that, especially the Olympian shake. But maybe find a way and everybody has a different connection formula.
Yeah.
Your connection formula and mine may have some certain overlap. Clearly, we're both podcasters. Clearly, that's one of the ways we like to connect.
Yeah.
And clearly, you like attachment theory. I love it. That's one of the ways that I come alive. Like, I can talk about that all day. And so some people would like snore. No. And there's nothing wrong with that. By the way, just a hilarious little piece. Some of us are shamed to not really claim our freak flag. Back in the 80s when I was in high school, this is, back when Wham was a band and George Michael and all the girls had a crush on him. And I was supposed to be into rock and punk rock and some new wave. I was not allowed to like Wham, but the problem was I liked it. I had to listen to it with the doors shut, windows rolled up. And it took a very long time for me to come out and say, I freaking love George Michael. Like, I went to see George Michael without my wife in 2008.
Oh my gosh.
It was a bunch of gay men, and the other guys who were there were guys with their girlfriends who went only because their girlfriend wanted to go. I was the only single straight guy. I was like, yeah, George, let's go.
I'm embracing this.
So find a way to, to really just shatter all the BS and just zero in on the thing that you're into. I was so grateful, by the way, that George Michael was vindicated. Taylor Hawkins, the drummer from Foo Fighters, we before he died, sadly, when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he used his moment at the mic saying, "George Michael belongs in the Hall of Fame." I was like,
oh, you're like, yes.
Thank you, Taylor Hawkins. And then a year later, George Michael was in the Hall of Fame. But what I'm getting at is, irrespective of what, even if you never got in anywhere, zero in on that thing. It could be that you're really into stamp collecting. Go for it. Like, just whatever causes you to feel that life force. So yeah, I would start with self, just one thing.
Yeah. And
build.
It's like, surround yourself with people who are going to support a lot of those things in you as well. Like, if the people closest to you are the ones giving you any sort of like, "Ooh, you like that," or those are not your people. And I'm just telling you now, tell them bye. Because the people that are supportive of you and that really truly love you and care for you will support that. They'll encourage it. They'll be like, "Yeah, we've seen that in you forever. I don't know why you've been taking so long to figure it out. Like, finally, like, we've been on that board. You just haven't been," right? Like, those are the people you want in your life. And if the people you're in a group with or surrounded by are not, and they think it's weird, I'm telling you, you're better off alone finding a new group of people, because those are not the people for you. And I love that. I love that you said that, like, find those things that you were deeply passionate about and own it, right? And own those, it's like, that means taking time to quiet everything down, to sit with yourself, to really ask yourself, what is that? Because I think we live busy lives. We're always distracted. We're always, we don't have that time to even figure what that is.
Beatrice, just wow. The way you articulated that, I couldn't say it better. We need to hang out with champions, people who believe in us and who see us.
Yeah.
Had I not married a woman who understood my mission of becoming a psychologist, and I would say that a lot of people couldn't. Like, this was not like a dream come true. It's like, hey, we're going to be low-key a little poor for a minute. But I'm going to grow this thing and it's going to be awesome. She was 1,000,000% down. She not once along the very treacherous path, not once did she say anything less than, let's go. People can feed you or bleed you. The 5 people with whom you spend the most time, you become the average of those. You become the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. It's a really important thing. And if somebody says TMI or that's lame or weird or like, yeah, just seriously, bye, as you said. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Like, I'm like,
don't even waste your time.
For sure. I know. I'm so down with the way, I love the music of what you just said.
Yeah. And one thing I want to leave listeners with today, in that, I think something practical that I loved in your book is you gave examples of things you can do also to get yourself out of autopilot. Go to a coffee shop, take a bike ride, So I think if you're finding yourself, one, I would absolutely recommend getting this book. You can also get it on audio, which is how I've been listening to it. But I love that practicality of it. You gave a long list of things. I think it was adapted from someone else, but you gave a really long list of practical things of, so one, like you said, get centered, figure out, what are those things, what is that thing that you have put off, or a thing in you that you love that you want to pursue? And then on your daily, what are things that can get you out of this monotonous life? The list was great. It was, like I said, go to a coffee shop, I think it was be outdoors, go for a walk. Like, they were very easy, practical things. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely say pick up the book, because I think those are so, so great and so easy to do on a daily. You don't have to, quit your job and, go move to Bali for a year or anything like that. I think, like you said, it's finding all those areas to get connected into. And you, like you said, start with you first, connect with you. Because when you connect with you and you know who you are, you'll have so much more capacity to do all the other things, to connect with others, to connect with the world, to connect with, a higher being. So, anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we conclude?
Yeah, just feel free to hit me up. I love hearing from people. Check out the podcast, the book. I'm really, really happy with the way the book came out. Be willing to, again, just create more, consume less. Do those things. Be willing to suck. Don't be diminished by, Eat, Pray, Love. That was Elizabeth Gilbert's journey, and she did great on it. Your journey will be different from hers, probably. And it's no less glorious. So really just appreciate what you've got. What we appreciate appreciates. Just really dial into that and really make sure that the song is yours as much as you possibly can.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Adam. And if you want to get in touch with Adam, we're going to add, I'll have all the links definitely in the bio below, and you can reach out to him. But thank you so much for coming on. I'm leaving very I'm amped for we're at the end of the year right now for everybody. So I think this is a really good time to take inventory of your life, inventory of, did you enjoy this last year? Did you feel fulfilled? So I would say this is the perfect time to get this book and to sit with it and read it over the holidays as we step into the new year. So thank you again.
And thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Oh, Beatrice, such a blast. And yes, just to echo what you said, it's a super easy read. So you will not be sitting there going, oh my gosh, I can't get through it. It just jumps off the page.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm told.
Is.
And my gosh, Beatrice, I am so happy to know you. You're so cool.
This was so great. I know. We'll definitely have to stay in touch. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how where your journey takes you. You're already doing amazing things. I have a feeling it's going to be even more amazing from here.